on my family having inflatable kayaks growing up. Yeah, here I, Tanis, she, her, hers of Seattle, share about my family having 2 inflatable kayaks for a few years when I was growing up. It felt like a few years. So it was about 2 years, I think. So today is Monday 1 September 2025. So I'm referring to a period of time, you know, like 20 years before present kind of thing. And we had my parents had, the family had a boat. That, you know, as a kid, it's kind of it's a family thing and that we share, but like, you know, especially me as the youngest, and like, well, he let me, you know, drive it once. That wasn't like I was the captain. Yeah. It wasn't like I was the one getting fuel in it or repairing parts or buying batteries, though I may have gone for some of those things and learned about different components of a boat. It was a motorboat, approximately 23-foot bayliner. It was 23 1/3 feet from tip of bow to the tip of the stern, kind of thing. And at some point, closer towards the end than the beginning of having the boat, we got, if I'm recalling correctly, inflatable kayaks. So, like, if you guys have ever had an inner tube or used an inner tube, some of them are really hefty and like need to be pumped full of air from like an air pump, and some inner tubes are kind of like more on the flimsy side and you can just inflate them, like kind of thing. And these were ones that like were like more towards, they were sturdy, I'll use the term. So they weren't quite like you could just easily puncture them. They were red and they could be inflated, which was cool, because then once you know, fill them full of air and then just like you know, let the air out and roll them up. So they were easy storage kind of thing, and they weren't necessarily super expensive, that kind of thing. Well, which was different than the fiberglass dinghy that we had for the boat, which was a fiberglass is it's a set material, so it didn't change shape. So like it couldn't be collapsed down, kind of like an inflatable kayak could. And it was fun. It was fun to paddle around, and we had them for a little bit. It was a fun way to enjoy the water without necessarily getting in the water. However, if the kayak flipped or something, or misstepped, you know, could fall in the water. There's potential for getting wet, but however, that's not the same as like, you know, swimming. I like getting in the water, kind of thing. And so it's a fun way to explore an area and cover distance, while being close to the water without being in the water, and kind of like getting to set one's own pace through the kayaking motion. So it was a fun one. I enjoyed it, and I enjoy kayaking. Yeah, so it was, again, what is the takeaway there for me was, personally, I found it enjoyable, and it was a good experience of sometimes things like it doesn't take a whole lot of, the monetary value was not necessarily super high for the amount of enjoyment they brought. So it was like one of those purchases where some people are like, money can't buy happiness, and I'm like, but when something is like inexpensive and it still costs money, or expensive, and it provides something that I could not have gotten without it, it is possible to like, quote unquote, buy happiness. Not necessarily like eternally and everything, but like it was one of those purchases where it's like, and money can bring happiness, and enjoyment. So it was one of those kind of purchases for by my parents, for the family, where I was like, this is one of those. So that's all my family having inflatable kayaks growing up.